This is True Crime and Scene. In today's episode, we delve into the chilling life of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Ramirez terrorized California in the mid-1980s, leaving a trail of fear and horror. He was accused of a series of brutal crimes, his name whispered in hushed tones. And yet, here's the bizarre twist: there was little evidence, no witnesses, and no bodies to confirm his reign of terror. How can a man be convicted of such horrific offenses when he leaves no trace? Richard's early life was steeped in darkness. Born in 1960 in El Paso, Texas, he was raised by an abusive family. His cousin, a decorated Vietnam veteran, introduced him to a world of violence and horror. This young boy idolized the brutal acts of his relative, learning that power came through fear and domination. By the time he made his way to California, the darkness within him had grown, feeding off his traumatic upbringing. In 1984, residents of Los Angeles and San Francisco were blissfully unaware that their lives would change forever. Ramirez began his crime spree, breaking into homes under the cover of darkness, while victims slept peacefully oblivious to the nightmare that was about to unfold. With each crime, the terror escalated. He attacked individuals in their homes, committing unimaginable acts of violence. And yet, there were no witnesses, only whispers of a shadowy figure darting through the night. Victims described a scruffy man with a serpent-like grin. But without anything more concrete, the police were left in the dark. As the media caught wind of the Night Stalker, fear gripped California. People began to sleep with their lights on and barricade their doors. But the elusive killer continued his spree, seemingly always one step ahead of law enforcement. The streets turned into a hunting ground, and the police were desperate. How could a figure so menacing elude capture? In the summer of 1985, Ramirez's reign of terror reached its peak, culminating in a series of violent attacks that made headlines. The methods varied, but they were drenched in brutality and left a distinctive mark. Local authorities formed a task force, working around the clock to catch the guy behind the mask of horror. Yet, despite their best efforts, they were getting nowhere, struggling to connect the dots of his chaotic trail. Oddly enough, detectives found something puzzling amid the chaos. Ramirez left behind no fingerprints, no DNA, no clues. Was he an unusually skilled killer, or was there an element of luck intertwined with his dark agenda? There were stories to a strange coincidence suggested he might have a ritualistic approach. Yet every angle they pursued ended up as a dead end. Then came the breakthrough: surviving victim, who had been brutally attacked, provided more than a description. She recounted a chilling interaction with Ramirez as he entered her home. And while the details were foggy, the terror burned in her memory. Yet without corroborating evidence, law enforcement faced a daunting task. Still, the night began illuminating when a witness caught sight of Ramirez's car, one of those old-school Chevy Novas. The police had their lead, but the question remained: was this lead strong enough to finally snag the Night Stalker? Days turned into weeks. Just when the investigators were starting to feel hopeful, a mysterious twist raised the stakes. An eyewitness claimed to have also seen a different man at the scene of one of the attacks. The sighting sent shockwaves. Who was this other man? Did he play a role in Ramirez's spree? Or was the darkness trying to mask itself behind him? As the once thrilling manhunt started to stall, Ramirez's behavior began to shift too. While police were desperately trying to piece everything together, Ramirez was increasingly brazen. He walked the streets, flashing his sinister smile, reveling in the chaos. The audacity felt surreal. Did he secretly thrive on the fear he instilled? On the fateful night of August 30th, 1985, everything changed. Ramirez was finally captured, not in a grand showdown, but in a moment of fate. A group of residents spotted him trying to steal a car in their neighborhood and immediately recognized him from the sensational Eyes media coverage. They chased him down the street, cornering him, finally managing to hold him until police arrived. Yet, as Ramirez was apprehended, a new question loomed: would there be enough to convict a man whose reign of terror was shrouded in shadows? His arrest sent ripples through California. The arrest of a monster, the end of a nightmare, or was it just the beginning of a more complex story? As investigators combed through the evidence, Ramirez remained unfazed, smirking as he touted his notoriety. The trial would commence, but the most confounding part of the case lay ahead. What seemed like an open and shut case began spiraling into a tension-filled saga that felt oddly scripted. As witnesses lined up to testify, the conflicting stories left jurors questioning who he really was: just a man consumed by darkness, or a frightening figure twisting the justice system to his advantage. With tension building in the courtroom, the prosecution zeroed in on the implications of Ramirez's actions. They needed to present their case without the smoking gun everyone hoped for. Could they turn the shadow of his confession into a weapon? Would the gruesome recounting of the survivors' tales be enough to tip the balance toward justice? But deep within the shadows loomed an even darker revelation. Just as the prosecution thought they had everything in the bag, inconsistencies began popping up: allegations of police misconduct, mishandled evidence, and even whispers of a darker conspiracy tied to Ramirez's capture. What if the very system meant to protect hadn't just turned a blind eye? And just as whispers began to circulate about potential accomplices working in the shadows, the pressure grew. Was it possible that the Night Stalker was part of something larger, a devilish orchestrator of calamity under the veil of anonymity? With every piece lining up, this nightmare was only about to intensify. But as the nights dragged on and the whispers grew louder, dread sank into the hearts of everyone affected. As the trial of Richard Ramirez resumed, tension thickened in the air. Survivors took the stand, recounting their harrowing encounters with the Night Stalker. Each testimony painted a picture of terror, yet the trial was far from straightforward. With every piece of evidence presented, a disturbing truth began to unfurl. What if Ramirez was not the only monster in the spotlight? The prosecution aimed to hammer home the malevolence of Ramirez's actions, and as they shuffled through evidence, they stumbled upon volatile information, a link to a broader network. Whispers of other participants began to surface. Some claimed to have seen sightings of a substantial figure looming in the shadows whenever Ramirez struck. Days turned into weeks as the courtroom became a theater of horror. Moments of silence, breathless anticipation, and palpable dread gripped everyone involved. In one particularly tense session, a witness named Angela stood to testify. "He was there. I saw him with Richard," she exclaimed, her voice shaky but firm. The weight of her accusation rattled the room. "There was a man. I don't know who he was, but he was giving Richard instructions." Angela's revelation hung like a thundercloud over the defense, and despair rippled through Ramirez's team. Could they really be dealing with a mastermind? The thought sent shockwaves through the investigation, fueling excitement among detectives eager to uncover the elusive puppet master behind the Night Stalker. As the police scrutinized Ramirez's past, they discovered more disturbing connections. A network fueled by fear that preyed on vulnerable individuals, a pipeline of exploitation. The deeper they dug, the more it became clear. This was not just one man's madness. Every twist turned into a potential revelation. Whispers of human trafficking, illicit drug operations, and chilling exchanges involving an underground society began circulating. Was Ramirez merely a facade for a greater evil? The more investigators unraveled, the more cryptic the threads became. And just as evidence started piling up, law enforcement was thrown for a loop. Another anonymous letter arrived, signed S, hinting at Ramirez's connections. including someone who helped orchestrate the chaos. Your monster is merely a pawn in a more nefarious game. It read, "When the truth emerges, it will derail everything you thought you knew." With fresh eyes turned on to the testimonies, law enforcement began examining every interaction that Ramirez had, leading them into a web of alleys and darkened corners where shadows lurked. Could the diabolical nature of this case reveal that Ramirez had been pawning his crimes while another orchestrator pulled the strings? In the courtroom, Ramirez smiled dryly. He seemed to thrive on the fear and confusion he had created. Objects were thrown into disarray while he reveled in the chaos. The nightmare he authored was starting to take on a life of its own. The intense scrutiny heightened as detectives reached one major breakthrough. A connection had been formed between Ramirez and a series of unsolved crimes up and down the California coast. The stalker wasn't operating alone, and now they had a chance to pierce through the veil of horror wrapping around his tail. With the trial reaching a fever pitch, tension fluttered on the edges as key players were summoned one by one. The puzzle pieces slowly fell into place. But even as they linked the chain leading up to Ramirez, more questions loomed larger than life. Was he a mere accomplice? Who were the people involved in this mysterious ring? As the sordid truth began to unfold, many eyed Ramirez with a mixture of curiosity and loathing, grappling with how one person could manipulate others into a dark dance of chaos. As the prosecution prepared for the closing arguments, the jagged hour they had built for this trial hovered precariously, teetering on the precipice. Would the connection to the shadowy figures prove sufficient to convict him? Or would his web of deception entrap them all? Ariella, a detective on the case, rose to present the last piece of evidence. "We always believed Ramirez was alone," she stated with authority. "However, he led us astray. There are more involved who desired the chaos, more who are still out there." The audience sat up straight, eyes wide with anticipation. What secrets could she unveil? Witnesses connected him to a group gathered around a man known as the architect, a chilling figure behind the night's horrors. She continued, "To understand Ramirez, you must understand this man." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The architect was spoken of in fearful tones, a name people feared to utter. Could there really be a puppet master lurking in the shadows? As whispers filled the room, tension struck as Ariella raised a photograph. "This is him," she declared. "We aim to uncover the truth behind the web of atrocities that extend far beyond Ramirez." As the trial reached its apex, a series of shocking revelations started to unfold. Investigators began preparing for what could potentially become a larger investigation, one rooted in darkness that spread like a wildfire. Asterisk, 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 the court may have reached its crescendo, but the real battle is just beginning. Stay tuned for the conclusion of this gripping true crime saga. The truth is closer than it seems, and secrets long buried are about to rise from their graves.